Okay, so to end off the podcast episode here, we're all going to give two trade predictions for the upcoming deadline on Monday. We're going to give one trade that we think is going to happen, a realistic trade, and then we're also going to give an insane trade that we think is very unlikely to happen, but we want to happen. So, Austin, why don't we start with you? What are your trade predictions for this upcoming Monday?
Okay, so I'm for my realistic one, I'm just gonna keep this very simple, one that everyone's talking about, and I'm gonna say Taylor Hall is gonna go to Boston for a first round pick and John Beecher, who's a prospect of Boston. I know they usually don't really care that much about their prospects. John Beecher, he's a big center who's pretty fast, but he doesn't have a lot of offensive upside. He reminds me a lot of Tage Thompson, who Buffalo got in the Ryan O'Reilly trade. So I think he would just be a perfect little squeak in there. And then I believe that for our, cap situation, we'll retain someone Hall, just to make the numbers work. And yeah, I think that's going to be a very realistic trade that we're going to see come through. In terms of my crazy trade, I'm going to say that Rasmus Ristolainen, Taylor Hall, Linus Olmark, and Sam Reinhart are going to go to Winnipeg for Cole Perfetti, Kyle Connor, 2 first-round picks, and salary retained on Kyle Connor for I think 2 years. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say is my nutso trade. I think we're going to do a full swap of our first few lines, and then you're going to put Reinhart with Dubois and have Allmark back up Hellebuck. It's a bit out there, but I can see it.
I'll give you one thing. That was a huge stretch. That was pretty insane. It's never going to happen, but...
I mean, I know it's not going to happen in terms, you definitely got to work out some draft picks, If I got a half hour, I could probably do the math and figure it out, but I definitely think it's going to be a 6-man trade for sure.
I don't know if that trade is... even with the draft picks, man, you got to think about the cap. That cap-wise is just nuts.
It's definitely going to be some numbers to crunch. But the main pieces are Ristolainen for Kyle Connor. That's really what we're trying to swap here.
Fair enough. That's pretty bold. Connor, what do you got?
All right, so in terms of realistic trades, I've got Jonathan Bernier from Detroit going to Colorado for a 3rd-round pick.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's great.
A very, very reasonable one.
It's a rental. It's an older, established goalie. Colorado needs backup, and honestly, a 3rd-round pick for Bernier, who's a guy that might walk after posting up a 9-10 save percentage for Detroit. You got nothing to lose if you're Detroit, honestly, and that gives Colorado some goaltending depth that they would love to see. My crazy trade would be Johnny Goudreau and Sean Monahan to Philadelphia for Nolan Patrick and Travis Connectny. A center and a winger, and a center and a winger. That's it.
Wow.
No picks, no nothing.
I think that was a very fair trade, to be honest.
I don't. 2 first-line players for a player who is struggling on the 4th line in a healthy scratch, and you're just hoping he becomes really good again.
It's a retool for both. It's a retool for both teams. And you bring back a Philadelphia boy to the Flyers. What's not to love?
I'm all for
I
it.
think Philly would win that trade if that was a trade. All right, for my trade that I can see happening, it's a little bit of a cap crunch, but I think we can make it happen. It's going to be with the Winnipeg Jets and the Buffalo Sabres. Just us talking about Ristolainen earlier and looking at that defensive pairing has made me that's just so beautiful. He signed for another year, which makes sense for Winnipeg's perspective because they're definitely going to want to keep him. Again, right-handed, so he plays with Morrissey. The Jets, all they'd have to give back cap-wise is Matthew Pro, and then maybe a depth guy, or just Buffalo retain a little bit of salary, although I don't think they'll do that. Then that trade makes sense cap-wise. Value, obviously, Buffalo's still losing this trade, so I would say that Winnipeg throw in a first, because I think they think they're going to be a competitive playoff team, especially with this move. and maybe a second or conditional second/third. So that's my trade that I want to see happen / think could happen. I know it's a bit of a reach, but my other one that I want to see happen isn't that big of a reach. So I think I even out in the end. And it's Taylor Hall, so Buffalo again, going to Colorado for Brandon Saad. If Buffalo retain 50% of the salary, it would make sense cap-wise. All Colorado has to do then is throw in their first because they know they're going to be a good team. They know they don't need a prospect right now desperately. And then they can even throw in a third that can be conditional that turns into a second in 2023 because that's when they have their next second if they need to. And I think that's within the realm of reasonable, just cap-wise. So that's why I'm going to say that. And Saad's been struggling a little bit, so I want to see it happen.
Interesting. Very unique.
Mine are like both like little reaches.
Yeah, I don't know. They're not out there though.
Yeah, I know. I kind of just kept two.
I can see both of those happening, to be honest.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like had this one locked in mind, or the Jets one locked in mind. Sorry, and then I was like, yeah, I want to see Taylor on Colorado, so let's do it.
All right, now last but not least, Jimbo, what you got for us?
Okay, so my first one here, one I think is likely to happen. It's not the most interesting one, but I have Montour going to the Florida Panthers for, I'm not sure who exactly, but a prospect and, say a second or third or something. So, obviously we know the need is there for the Panthers since Ekblad is gone. So
I like that. I like that a lot.
Bolster the D, yeah.
That's my reasonable one, and my exciting one would be a real headliner, I think. So, Taylor Hall. But where does he go? Edmonton Oilers for Ryan Nugent Hopkins and a second.
Whoa.
So they bring back Taylor Hall. They just go, heck it, first line, that's all. Actually, I guess what they could do is make David Hall, Draisaitl drops back down a second line center. That could make sense, actually.
Even better, they
do
the yield Taylor Hall for Nugent Hopkins. The trade is 1-for-1.
They could, but there'd be a cap issue.
Oh, you know?
Well, no, they could retain.
Retaining some salary.
Yeah, retain some salary.
1-for-1, but I feel like
I'll take
Buffalo
a second.
Would want just a little bit of a sweetener to that, in my opinion, but...
They would have to make sure that Nuge signs, though, because he's a UFA. So that would be the biggest thing.
They're both UFAs. They've,
Crazy, even, like, to add on to it, they do, like, the good old trade and sign. So, like, you see the trade go through, and then, like, 5 minutes later, it's like, Nuge has signed an extension. Hall has signed an extension.
And they're the same.
They're the same.
For, like,
6 years or, like, $6 million.
That'd be nuts.
That would not be bad for Edmonton, honestly. $6 million.
I love that for. I love that for both teams. To be honest, I think that's a really, really strong trade.
Because then Hall can just replace what Draisaitl's doing on the first line, and then Draisaitl just goes back to doing what he normally does, which is be amazing, back with his second line, and then Edmonton has two really good lines again.
That gives Buffalo to the perfect second line center.
If he signs, I think that would be the biggest thing because he's a UFA. So why would he be like Buffalo at the end of my career? But that would be awesome for Edmonton, in my opinion.